A concept album tells a story from the opening bars of the first track to the very last note. It was a popular theme in the 1970s, but several artists have recently embraced this type of release. An online forum discussed the most essential concept albums for your collection, and here are their musical findings. It's a concept album that divides opinion, even among lovers of classic progressive rock. However, when we think of this theme, Tales from Topographic Oceans is among the first to come to mind. Whenever music lovers of a certain age consider a concept album, there are two default suggestions. Tales from Topographic Oceans and Dark Side of the Moon are the most common replies. One of the forgotten albums of this genre, White Mansions, is a 1978 release that tells a story from the American Civil War. English artist Paul Kennerly is praised on this thread, with one poster likening it to a Broadway play with characters played by Waylon Jennings, Jesse Coulter, and Eric Clapton. It was the album that inspired a revival in 1960s mod music, and Quadrophenia is fondly remembered here. It's mentioned regularly in this discussion, and one forum member informs us, using 60s speak, that Side 2 is high gear. More than one Marillion concept album was mentioned, but Misplaced Childhood won the final vote. One respondent confirmed that they'd discovered the band in an unusual way by watching the classic cult 1980s comedy The Young Ones. Psychedelic, proto-punk. The Pretty Things cover many genres, and they also came up with a notable first when releasing SF Sorrow in 1968. One forum member informs us that this album was the first rock opera. Heavy metal experts Queensryche may not be the first band to come to mind when discussing concept albums. This 2003 release fits the theme, however, and it's loved by the forum. It tells the story of Nikki, who joins a revolutionary faction, and one person states that it's more appropriate today than when they wrote it. A double concept album from 1984, Zen Arcade, is described as influential on this thread. One poster describes it as seminal and claims that without this release, there would be no Nirvana, no Foo Fighters, and no Pearl Jam. Progressive rock pioneer Alan Parsons released this album with his band in 1976. It takes inspiration from an Edgar Allan Poe book of the same name, and one commenter confirms that this is Poe given the prog rock treatment. This is where it all began for Alice Cooper. His debut album of 1975 launched a legendary artist, and it's still a favorite among his fans. While the iconic Schools Out came later, Welcome to My Nightmare has an incredible track listing, and one poster says it's unique and ahead of its time. Genesis is another band that offers plenty of choice within the concept album theme. 1974's The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway is a classic, telling the story of Rael and his journey of self-discovery. A tragic rock opera would never be the most uplifting of albums, and Berlin is sometimes tough to listen to. However, it's a brilliant example of this theme, and one commenter testifies that the release is amazing nonetheless. This is an unusual suggestion and one that I personally intend to follow up on. Greek progressive rock band Aphrodite's Child featured Vangelis, and, as the name suggests, the concept is based on the apocalypse. If that hasn't sold it to you, one forum member also claims that 666 was Salvador Dali's favorite album. Diamond Dogs was based on the classic George Orwell novel 1984, and it hit the mark for one listener. The individual recommends Bowie's work, stating that this is the most stunning display of his musical prowess, and it will send you on a dystopian music adventure. Sgt. Pepper by the Beatles is considered the first concept album, with memorable tracks like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and When I'm 64. It's a great example of the genre and a fitting end to this debate.